So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to start, we're going to create a singleton, and I'm going to demonstrate why it doesn't work with unit testing. We talked about a little bit in the last video. In this video, we're going to demonstrate why it doesn't work, and then we're going to demonstrate our network service using dependency injection, and we create an instance of our networking service. And yeah, so here we go. So right now I have a project right here. It doesn't do anything, right? All that we have is, as you can see, this is it right here. But what we're going to do is, in these classes, I'm going to create a networking singleton service, and then I'm going to make another service, and it's going to be an object, networking service dependency injection, and we're going to use dependency injection. What dependencies are we going to add? We're going to add well, we're just going to have one dependency, and that dependency is going to be the URL. Now people say, but why is the URL object a dependency? Because in a larger scale project, a lot of times the URL is built on the fly. There are lots of components to developing URL. You can look up URL components. And I think I have a video that covers some of that. But so that's going to be our dependency. Is we're going to pass in a query string. We're going to hard code our query string. But I just want you to see an example of using dependency injection. But right for now, we're not going to do dependency injection. We're going to do a singleton. Okay. Give me a second. Okay. So here we go. We're going to say static let shared, right, equals networking singleton service. All right. So when you have a singleton, again, you create your static let, and then you set your init, right? Your init has to be private because you don't want anyone accessing it, right? So private init, and so now we have that. So now we're going to create a function, a public function. Excuse me. Fetch API response. Okay. And part of this is URL. Completion. Okay, right here at escaping. And I've done a tutorial covering this as well. Escaping, and of course we're going to do result type. And I've already created a custom error type called response error. You can download this code if you want to. If you don't want to do this from scratch, response error right here, as you can see. So we already have that, right? Okay, yeah, I just have to make sure that's not yeah, that's building. So now we'll say let task equal URL session. And of course, a lot of times we can make this another dependency. Anything that needs to be tested separately, any component that can be tested separately should be a dependency. Okay. With URL. Response. Right? I don't know. I hate when I do that. Say response. Then I'm gonna go here. Error. Okay. And of course, I have to go back here and say task resume, or else this will not run. Right? Never forget that. That's something that used to trip me up a lot. Guard let data equal data else completion, right? Dot failure dot no data. Okay. And of course, return, because you can't allow it to fall through. And this, it says data is not in scope because that's a capital D, and it should not be. Now it is in scope. Okay. Data was defined but never used. So it will be used though. So let's see, let's go here. And we'll say guard let response equal response as HTTP URL response. Okay. We'll say this. And this is a way of checking to make sure that your status code is between 200 and 300. Right? 200 dot dot dot. And there are other ways syntactically to do it as well. 200, 300 tilde equal response dot status code. Else, right, return. So now this isn't falling through. And we'll say completion. So if it isn't 200, 300, if it isn't between 200 and 300, status code is bad, right? Dot failure, dot bad status code. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and move on here. I'm going to say guard error equals nil, right? So that's what we want. We want our error to be equal to nil. And if it's not, we're going to say completion dot failure dot what's just say bad response. Okay. And we need to return this. Return, and then of course all this stuff doesn't fail. We say completion dot success data. Okay. And we have everything we need. Now let's see. Guard. I said I'm setting it. I shouldn't be setting it, I should be comparing it. So there's two equal signs. And let's see. Cannot convert type data to expected type date. So somewhere along the line, I made something a date. What the heck? What did I make a date? Data. Guard let data equals data. I don't understand why this is saying data. Hold on. So the problem is I made this date accidentally right here instead of making it data. All right, and that should go away. So now what I want to do now is I want to call this, okay? So I'm going to go here to my main view controller and I should get a networking singleton service dot shared. And so again, this instance will always have will always refer to the same instance. This line of code, networking service I shared, no matter where I put it, it always refers to the same instance, not a new instance. Helper constants dot test URL1. Okay. 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 Result. And let me just do this real quick. Result dot map. Okay. Because I know something's going to return from here. So $, 0. Right. So I'm gonna say let's res equal results dot map. Now I'm gonna say print. Actually I'm gonna say data. Print. Okay, data. This should do this. So I'm gonna go ahead and this should write that yes, I've received data to my console. And which it did, 6,719 bytes, right? Of course, in the real world, whenever you get your data back, you're gonna use a switch case statement. But I just did this for shortness and brevity. So there you go. You have a response. It hasn't been parsed, and we are getting into parsing right now. That's another lesson. So, but here's the problem with this, okay? There is a problem. I'm gonna go Singleton Test, and we're gonna talk about the major problem. So the major problem with this is that, again, I have it right here. You cannot create an instance of a service for teardown and setup. Why? Because this is what it is. When you create a service in the Singleton, it's, well, first, yeah, networking. You can't. Well, let me see. Let me go back here. Right? And this will not allow you. This should like throw an error when I try. I've already done the testable import, right? So say service. See, and right here it's kind of like init service. See, what you need to be able to do is create an instance like you did here. Network service at share.fetch API response, but you can't. It won't allow it, right? And you can't create a small instance that says service. It just won't allow it. And because of that, you can't go here, create the instance, and set the and use the initializer to create an instance, and then you can't set that instance to nil here. So that's one main reason right there. And another thing too, just say hypothetically you were able to find some kind of way to do it, but you can't. Again, these are global. This is a globally accessed object, which means that while your app is running somewhere else and you're doing something, right? Anything that you do in the app is going to affect what takes place in testing and vice versa, right? Global scope cannot work with unit testing. Unit testing is meant to separate it from the rest of the functionality and just test it alone in its own little box. Just that component. You test, you create an instance of it, you test it, and then you destroy it. So that's the reason why that will not work. Okay. So we're going to contrast that with a networking service using dependency injection. So let's go over here and we're going to go ahead and create our networking service that uses dependency injection. So we're going to refactor. We're going to refactor this. Okay. We're going to do this a lot different. Okay. Remember too, I have helper constants. This is what I use for my URL. Okay. This is a property of type URL. Okay, not just a string, but of type URL. All right, so let's go back here. And yeah, we're gonna create a public function fetch API response, right? Oh, that's all we're gonna do. And our dependency, our external dependency is URL, right? Type URL, right? And session, SES session is another one, but we're having it right here. So if we wanted to, we could pass in URL session, right? URL session, but for the purposes of this, we won't. Equal URL session dot shared. Excuse me. And then we're going to say completion. Right? At escaping. Right? Okay. Escaping. And then we're going to say result. We have a result type. And of course, it's going to be what? Data, not date. Data response error. Hold on. Right? So again, response error. So now that we have that, we're going to set up our task, right? Let task equal session, right? Session dot data task, right? Because sometimes we want to be able to pass our URL session. Okay. And of course we could do that. So look, let me do it like this. Here's what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna take this out right here. Right? And we're gonna say this is URL, right? Data response error task dot resume So now we have this here. And we're going to say guard let data equal data. We're checking to see if our data is there. Because if it is, and everything else checks out, we're going to use it. Data, else, return, right? And then we're going to say completion dot failure dot no data. Okay. Then we're going to check this next one, and we're going to check for a response. If a response status code is appropriate. Okay, we're going to say guard let response equal response as HTTP as HTTP URL response, right? And then we're going to look over here, 200 to 300, right? Tilde equals response dot status code else, right? Return. And we're going to say completion dot failure dot bad status code. So now we're making sure that we have data, and we're making sure that we have a status code that is appropriate, which means it's between 200 and 300. We're going to make sure that our error is nil, guard error, right, equals nil, right, else, right, return, right, and then we're going to say completion dot success, right, data, right. So now we have everything that we need. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our main view controller. We're going to get rid of this, right? We don't need this, right? And we're going to run it like this. It's going to create a separate instance. And it's going to go like this. Networking service dependency injection, right? So I'm going to say let service equal let service equal networking service dependency injection. And we can say service dot fetch API response, right? Which would be helper constants dot test1. For session, we can say URL session dot shared. And then for the completion handler, we do that. And this should be results. Okay. And now we're going to do this the right way, not just map it, but we're going to say switch results case dot success, right? Let's data, okay? And we're going to print our data. Right? We're going to print data, and we're going to say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say data is this. Data, okay? And then we're going to say case dot failure, let error, right? Print. We're going to say there was an error. Okay, right? So yes, we have everything. Okay, it says it was never, yeah, whatever. Okay, I'm just gonna do that. All right. Here's something, Aaron. All right. So now when I go here, we should get our 6,007 something bytes of information. And and guess what? Nothing is happening. So let me go ahead and debug this and figure out what is. Okay, so basically I used some breakpoints and I came back and I figured out I did a few things wrong here. This was not supposed to be success. This will be failure. Oh my God. Dot bad response, right? And at the end of it, I should be saying completion, right? Dot success, right? Dot data. Okay. Oh my God. That was very knucklehead move. But we're gonna do a tutorial. Well, I've already done a tutorial on debugging and breakpoints to help you guys figure out how to debug stuff when things aren't working correctly. Yeah, fast forwarded that part because I didn't want to waste your time. All right, but I have another video on that. Right, so I'll go here, put that breakpoint, and there we go. So yes, this is working correctly, right? So, well, that remains to be seen. So this is what we want to do, and this is a light test. We're not going full blown. We want to make sure that some data is coming back, right? So this is it right here for unit testing. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that this is our we're going to go in here and we're going to make sure that we can just actually just run the test. We aren't going to worry about doing the setup and tear down, which we could, but here's what we're going to do, right? I'm going to get rid of, well, we're just going to go ahead and do a sample test and just get that out of the way, okay? And then in another video, I've touched upon tear down and setup in the other unit testing, the intro unit testing. But I just want you to see something apart from that, okay? So in the real world, again, we'll use setup and tear down. We're not going to do that right now, okay? So what we're going to do is, this is for unit testing, and you got to remember, when we do this, we have to be able to test this because it'll be asynchronous, right? So we have to use something called expectation, right? And we will get more in depth with the use of expectation later on. But I really want to introduce you to this now. XCT expectation, right? Description, right? And we'll say dependency injection. Okay, I'm just going to just say that. This is just a tag to differentiate it from if you ever have another expectation, XCT test expectation. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and create an instance. Let's networking service. Let's see, our service, right, equal networking service dependency injection. Okay, There we go. We have that. And now networking service should be dot fetch API. And this should be what? Helper constants dot test1. Okay. The URL session, right? I'll say URL session dot shared completion result. Okay. And then we're going to say switch, right? Result case dot success. All right. Case dot success. And case dot success should be like let data, right? And let data, and we're gonna have case dot failure, right? And we're gonna call this let error. Okay. All right. And let me see something. Right. So we have that. And then at the bottom, right outside of this switch, we're gonna say self dot wait for expectation timeout. I'm gonna say 5 seconds. Okay. Let's go back here and we'll say expectation dot fulfill expectation, again, expectation dot fulfill. Okay. And then we're going to meet the requirements of this case statement with an XC test assert not nil. XC test assert XC test, right? XCT assert not nil. Okay. And when if this passes down here, this should be XCT assert nil. Assert nil. Okay. So if it's not nil, we want data. If it's nil, right? Error, right? We want error to be nil. So if this passes, error is nil. And if it does, error is nil and data is not nil, right? And to run it, we don't have to go through a whole bunch of stuff. Go to the top. We can either press this button right here or go to the top, okay? And in this hypothetical test, it passed because we returned something, okay? Now, of course, this is not sufficient to thoroughly test the API response, right? This is not, but this is kind of like gives you an example of how we're gonna go about it. But testing an API is a lot more involved than this. It involves mocking, which we're going to get into later. But these are just things you can keep in mind and things you can build off of, because many of the concepts that I covered in this tutorial, you're going to return to, okay? So hopefully you understand why using a singleton for a networking service is not necessarily the best way to go, especially if you plan to do test-driven development. Yeah, so that's it for now. On to the next.